Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday over here. It's starting to get a little sunny over here. We're not gonna lie, in Los Angeles, we love our sun. So if this is your first time joining us, hello, my name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicated to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Lori, do you like my voice this morning? I call it my romantic voice. It's my winter romantic.
I do like that. Okay, this has nothing to do with anything, but because you made me think of this, I recently went and downloaded some of the old beginning Friends seasons, I should say, right? Remember Friends? I mean, I grew up
Oh
with
yeah,
them.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
100.
Yeah, so I was like, I want to go back to the very first season and watch it again, right? So there
Yeah.
was this time, remember Phoebe would, or what was her name?
Oh, and Phoebe got sick and
And she
hello.
had the voice, remember? And it was her sexy voice, and she tried to maintain having a cold because that was her sexy voice. I'm sorry, I just watched that. So, of course, when you said that, I'm like, are you going to go around trying to stay a cold so you can maintain your voice? Okay, to anybody in the audience, do you guys have any clue what I'm talking about? And you're like, okay, Lori, whatever. But yes, and Smelly Cat. Okay, we're not even going to go into Smelly Cat this morning. I can tell already on an Ask Lori, we're starting off with a bang here, guys. Okay, yes, there's no guest. There's no one. It's just me. I did have a couple offers to fill in for the guest, and I said, okay, I promised the audience an Ask Lori. If I came on today with a guest, you'd be like, wait, we get to ask you anything. Okay, so I'm going to just get through my little bit of slides with no Lori's Corner because it's Lori's Hour. Hey, that's a new one, Sadie. It's Lori's Hour. I like
I
the way
like
that.
that.
I do too. Okay, just quick, and Sadie will put this information in my February lineup for my webinars and my upcoming shows. So I've got some repeats coming back on that I'm very excited about. February 4th, I'm having Nadine on. Now, she was only on once. You guys may have remembered if you saw it, but she is a trademark attorney and she's the founder of Citrine Trademark. And I had her on just to kind of talk about trademarks because I was getting a lot of questions about it. And once again, I just kind of thought, well, let's give this a try. And there was more questions than the time allotted. And so I've asked her to come back on because many people think they have to get a trademark right away. They're not sure if they need to. They don't understand the difference between just in California versus US, international, all that. So we're going to have a discussion. She also works on other things within her firm, but we're going to focus a little bit on trademarks. And then our favorite, Emma, is back. I always, and if Emma's in the audience, I always say, Emma, you just got to come on every once in a while because she's a mover and a shaker, guys. She's always into something, got something new, knows a resource, knows something. I mean, Emma's just a wealth of what's actually happening out there. So Emma's coming on and we're going to talk about whatever we end up talking about. So that is for the 2 weeks in February. I've got the other 2 weeks also booked. I'll be letting you know as we go on. So any questions, try to put them in the Q&A because I'm able to see them there. If you put them in the chat, Sadie's always watching my back and she'll make sure they get there. So I'm going to start out by talking about legal structures because with Lisa being on last week, I know there was a ton of questions that were starting to be asked about legal structures. So we're going to have just a general conversation to put things in perspective. Let's say perspective. And what I'm speaking about does not matter if you're sole prop LLC corporation. It's really kind of getting the lay of the land. And as I always do, I'm going to start out with an analogy that sounds like it has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I always bring it back around, and the goal is to have a deeper understanding. So let's say we have a new human that comes into the world. And we know, as wonderful as it's new human, that human has to have a number, and it's called a social security number. So you get a social security number for this new human. Now, imagine if you had a belief that once you got that social security, it was like one and done. There was nothing else you had to get. There was no other associations, organizations, or may I say government regulations that the human needs, right? So you start driving a car and say, well, I don't need a driver's. Well, you got a social security. No, that's a driver's license, right? You start going out and maybe you want to build a house. Oh, no, that's a permit I have to get. But I got a social. No, that's a permit you have to get. Maybe you want to become a profession and you have to have a certification. But I got a social security and I got a driver. No, that's from over here. You have to have that, right? So as you start thinking about this, and we do it automatically, we learn it throughout the years. But if we were to step back and look at it and say, wow, it's really quite overwhelming when you think about all of the different agencies that interact and the different types of things, I'm going to call it things, you have to get. Because some of them are federal, one of them state. It could be county for permitting. It could be local. So just to go and say I need one thing is not true. Well, the same is true about legal structures and being in business in general. And we understand that. We know if we're going to be a bar, we have a liquor license, we have to get that. We are going to be a restaurant, we have to get a food permit, we have to get here. We understand that part of it. But what has happened is when it comes to legal structures, and I'm not trying to pick on social media, but it's part and parcel with social media. And the desire, humans like to simplify things, but they make things complicated. I don't get it. They like simple explanations, put everything in a couple 1-2 sentences, but they make their processes and structures extremely complicated. I think that's an oxymoron. Anybody can comment and see what you think about that. Let's create something that's got so many layers, but then let's try to explain it with one sentence. Well, this is what's happening with social media, with trying to understand, and advisors, I'm not going to limit it to just social media, of trying to understand these legal structures and all of the different agencies that come into play with the legal structures, with the whole being in business. So let's start out by doing a framework. Let's do a framework because we talked about, okay, I got to go get social security, I got to get a driver's license, I got to get a local permit to build. We're talking about all these agencies. Let's start out with a framework. So let's take a structure, a business structure. And in that, I'm going to talk about a sole prop. I'm going to talk about an LLC. I could be talking about a C Corp, a corporation, any of these. I could be talking about any of these, right? When I look at it, I immediately have to create 2 columns where I say, well, what does it mean on the state level and what does it mean on the federal level? And in that, what I'm really doing as well is on the state level, I'm going to say, what does that mean legally? What does that mean legally? Now, the reason I'm combining the state level and I'm saying, what does it mean legally? And trust me, when we get through this foundation, we can springboard and so many things are going to make sense. The business entities that are registered with the Secretary of State, everything other than a sole prop, which we'll talk about, they are registered with the Secretary of the State. Okay, that is where the legal aspect comes from. This is where you have to kind of go into our legal system, that we're a constitutional republic. So each state has its own requirements and rules. It's just like with, you have different rules within this state on sales tax, different rules within this state on a lot of things, right? So you have the state that is the container holding the legal structure. That's where it is registered. When we look at it on the federal side, we are looking at some overarching rules like human resource rules and stuff like that, which the state may have its own add-ons. But what we're really looking at federally, taxation, how is it taxed? So when we make a choice for our legal structure, sole prop can be included in that, we are choosing legally through the state and we are choosing taxation through the federal. So let's run a few examples on this. If I am a sole prop, I am not registered with any Secretary of State. I'm identified as what is the default status. So that means, say today I decide I'm going to start knitting doggy sweaters and selling them at the farmer's market, and I buy some yarn and I book with a farmer's market. I am doing what is called engaging in transactions, or another word they use, it's a legal word, it's called doing business. So by default, since I didn't register at something else, I'm a sole prop, okay? So legally, I'm not registered with the Secretary of State. We'll talk about, legal risk on that in a second, but just get the concept that I'm not registered with the Secretary of State. Now, if I choose to be an LLC, I'm registered with the Secretary of State. My legal structure is an LLC. The rules abiding by my LLC is through the state of California. But I can choose how I want to be taxed. I can be taxed as an LLC, which, by the way, is the same as a sole prop, or I can choose to be taxed as an S corp. If I was to start a corporation, I would register a corporation legally with the Secretary of State. Then I would choose, by choosing through the federal, by filling out a form, I could choose to be taxed as an S corp. I can choose to be taxed as a C corp is automatically if I don't do anything. So I just wanted to add that part. I can choose to try to be taxed as a nonprofit, not taxed, right? So you see that what I'm doing is I'm creating a legal structure, and then I'm choosing the taxation. And it's very commingled, because there are some things that means if an S corp is set up as a corporation is set up as an S corp, it's got a tax rule, but then it may also have certain rules within the state about these different corporations, right? So when you look at it, it's legal rules within the state and taxation rules on the federal. And then the myriad of choices you're making are depending on all kinds of situations. S corp is if you're profitable enough to make it beneficial to be an S corp. Many people choose that where it doesn't even make sense to. LLCs over a sole prop. Do you have some sound reasoning for legal protection and needing to have that legal protection? But that first understanding about separating the state and federal gives you some distinctions. Now, does that mean done? I'm done. I went through LegalZoom. If I did that, I'm set up. I'm good. No, because that's just like, if you will, having your social security number. I could be operating in a locality that requires a business license, even for home-based businesses. So I have to get a business license. I then have to make sure I follow through with the LLC requirements on the Secretary of State, which is the statement of information every 2 years. I have to make sure I pay the $800 franchise tax fee, which, by the way that is described, it's the privilege of being registered with the Secretary of State in California. That's the words that they use on their website. And many states use the word privilege, right? The privilege of being incorporated within the state. So I'll have people say, well, I opened up an LLC and I didn't do anything with it. And that's always an alarm to me, because the question is, did you pay the 800? No, I didn't have any business. I didn't do any business. No. The 800 is just for the privilege of being an LLC or a corporation, but we're talking about LLCs. So this is why often a sole prop, and we'll talk about the legal, into it, a sole prop makes such good sense for many companies starting out and maybe continuing to be. Unfortunately, over the years, the sole prop has gotten the bad rap. Now, you would almost think, by being exposed to different things, that the reason the sole prop got a bad rap is because there were so many lawsuits and people were getting sued, so they had to get an LLC. That's absolutely not true. The amount of lawsuits within small companies, and I can elaborate on if anybody wants more information on that, is really close to a very small number, and it has not increased over the years. The reason people are choosing to be LLCs now is kind of like the perfect storm. It started with companies such as LegalZoom making money on people filing as an LLC. So they're making money. Then advisors not understanding things, advising everybody to be LLC. And then almost like this fictitious safeguard, like if somebody's actually an LLC, they're more in business than if they were a sole prop, which isn't really true, but it reminds me, and I laugh about it now, back in the day when I was in my 20s, and it sounds so silly for those of you that are young, it sounds really silly, but it's true. If anybody's, understands what I'm about to say, you can tell me. I know what you mean. But remember anybody back in the days where just the act of somebody handing you a business card made them legit because it was so costly to have a business card, right? So you were like, oh my God, if you have a business card, you're legit. And just the fact that you got a business card, you're like, okay. Well, they're acting as if the LLC is that same concept. Does it benefit the owner? Sometimes no. It's just become this fictitious, it's okay, now you're really in business. And I hear that a lot. And I'm like, you know what I'm going to say, you're really in business when you can buy a quart of milk. So when you understand a little bit more about the foundation of these structures, you understand who is the authority that oversees the structures. You understand that there is a choice for some companies on how you're going to be taxed. Sole prop is taxed like a sole prop. That's pretty much a given. And by the way, I'm going to go in the questions in a minute. And I just want to tell you one other aspect. I mean, there's so much I can explain, it'll make sense, but let me tell you about this. Many of you, and you can let me know in the chat, you probably have heard that an LLC is a disregarded entity. I'll have people say that all the time. Yeah, LLC is a disregarded entity. Like, do you know what that means? And they're like, no. I'm going to tell you a quick story so you can understand LLCs. I'm going to make it a fun story. So it's got a little bit of just chatting with you about it. But many moons ago, and I don't know how long, but the real estate investor community. So I'm talking about people who would be collaborating on a collection of their own funds to invest in a big real estate project, right? They only had the choice of being a sole prop or a partnership, it would be, or being a corporation. Now, when you're a corporation, there's stock involved, stock distributions, equity. And this framework really didn't fit into what they were trying to do because they were trying to come together, create this big pool of money, invest in these real estate projects, and then go down the road. So divvying up stock and equity and all the documents they had to fill out and everything just wasn't fitting their format. So in many ways, they were kind of like a partnership, limited liability partnership, which doctors, et cetera, are, but that wasn't really giving them what they wanted legally either. And so they went to the IRS and knocked on the IRS's door. And I want you to picture the IRS is like a restaurant and it's got a menu sitting there. And on the IRS's menu is a sole prop, which is actually in their terms, a self-employed person, a partnership, self-employed persons, more than one, and corporations, incorporated. That was on their menu. Right? And so you can see there's not legal aspects to it. It's a tax. You're taxed as a self-employed person, one, more than one partner, or you're a corporation. And then you're an employee of the corporation, complete different world, right? So they all excited, knocked on the IRS's door and said, hey, IRS, we're having this problem. It's not working, our business and everything. And so we got this great plan, IRS. We want this like hybrid little thing, and it's going to give us some more legal protection, but we don't have to do the annual minutes. We don't have to worry about this messy stock stuff. What do you think, IRS? Isn't that a great idea? Well, you can imagine the IRS said, no, this is what's on our menu. We don't serve that. We don't have no hybrid stuff. You want some fancy little thing? Go to state statute. Okay. Remember, constitutional republic, state statute. So they go to the states and the state said, okay, we'll do this hybrid. We'll call it an LLC. Don't mean to throw you guys into la la land, but technically LLCs are not incorporated. Corporations are, but we won't get into the detail to confuse you, right? But it's like, okay, yeah, we'll get into this like little LLC thing. That's great. So it's by state statute, right? So IRS literally says, if you're a single member LLC, I'm going to tax you like a self-employed person, which is the same as a sole prop. If you're a multi-member LLC, I'm going to tax you like a self-employed persons, which is a partnership. So the disregarded entity is because the IRS literally disregards it as an entity. And that's why. And so that's why you'll hear people say, well, a sole prop and an LLC are taxed the same way. Correct. That what we're referring to its legal structure name. They're both taxed as a self-employed person, which is the IRS's terminology. And to end this story, so down the road, the same group of people come knock on the IRS door and said, okay, IRS, we're loving our little state statute, our LLC. It's working out perfect. But you know what? We were thinking, we really like that S Corp taxation structure. We want that too. Well, remember a little bit ago, I told you when you register as a corporation and then you fill out a form to tell the IRS how you're wanting to be taxed. This is a corporation. So on the menu already, on IRS's menu, so there's a form 2553 S election was on the menu. Corporations have to fill it out if they want to be taxed as an S Corp. So when this group said, hey, we like this S Corp thing, IRS literally went in the menu and said, here, if you're an LLC, fill out this form. And then the IRS sees that company, sees them for taxation as an S Corp. The state of California, in this case, still sees them legally. They're still an LLC. So let's pretend I'm an LLC taxed as an S Corp. If the state of California would come in, they'd go, good morning, LLC. If I filled out 2553 and the IRS came in, they'd say, good morning, S Corp. So you get that tax structure, but you also have to follow all the taxation rules. You have to have a separate form 1120S. It's due on March 15th. You've got to be an employee of the company. You got to do a W-2 for your employee. All those rules are now part of your rule book. But you don't have to do the minutes and the annual report and the bylaws and all that stuff that you would have to do if you were legally structured like an S Corp. So in this case, you can see it's kind of an imperfect match that was put together. I'm an LLC on the state side. Okay, I am taxed like a self-employed person or persons. Okay, now I'm an LLC. I filled out 2553. I'm taxed like an S Corp. So when you draw that line and you start to look at these things on an individual basis, it's nonsense starts to make a little bit more sense. And the reason I'm telling you this is to be able to have a awareness, an opening up of the mind to the fact that it's not just get a social security number and you're done. There's a whole lot of different angles and aspects to it. So you start not trusting these single sentences. I've been rambling for how many minutes to just explain the difference between a legal structure from a structure legally and a taxation. So obviously there's more to this than you would think. One last thing, because I'm so close, I want to add this. EIN numbers are employee identification numbers. A sole prop can choose whether or not to have one if they want to use an EIN instead of their social security number. But once they choose it, it's like the IRS recognizes the sole prop social security. If you choose to get an EIN, it goes on top of it. So now you've got to use that EIN number. LLCs, corporations, they're separate, distinct entities. So they got to have an EIN, their own social security number. So that's where an EIN is. Now, a sole prop can say, I want to use my social security, but the minute they hire somebody, they are now reporting payroll taxes to the federal government. And that's why they then have to have an EIN number. Now, in the state of California, if you're an LLC, it's your corporate ID number that's on your articles of organization, articles of incorporation. If you're a corporation, these corporate ID numbers starts with 202, B202 a lot of times if you're a LLC. That is your California number. A lot of agencies, even within California, will use the EIN just because it's on a federal level and it creates some consistencies. But if you're filling out any forms, you have to be aware, are they asking for my corporation number or are they asking for my EIN? Many people get confused and fill out the EIN when it's really the corporation. Okay, I'm going to run to some questions. Got more I can tell you depending on the questions. And a lot of times the questions cause me to talk some more on something. So Anonymous, the first one, I have a home-based business, LLC, currently, and we're planning to move to a different home soon together with the home-based business. Now, what do I need to do to move the home-based business to the new address. Okay, I'm going to ask Anonymous to quickly put in, if you're here and you're listening, I'm sure you are, when you say move into a different home, is that home still in the state of California or is that home outside the state of California? Key thing, and this is the perfect question because it allows me to bring up something I wanted to bring up. So please put that in there. And Sadie, when you see that go in, would you let me know in case I don't catch it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And next, Anonymous, if you have two owners, one male and one female, and you want them to have you want to have your female owner be the majority owner, at what point do you need to have document that is and the state of federal? Okay, here we go. Sadie, I got to have you keep an eye out again. Okay. This is beautiful because it's explaining my main point. Anonymous number 2, I have to know the legal structure. Okay. Is it an LLC? Is it a corporation? What is it? I got to know how it's legally structured to be able to answer that question because the legal structure plays into the documentation that's required and how it is documented. It's like a whole different game. So I got to know what legal structure is. So Sadie, watch for that one. Where should I go to learn how to run, operate an LLC? That one's easy. Sadie, guess what I'm going to say?
We're gonna have to put some information in the chat because I think this person might not be a client of the SBDC, Lori.
There you go. When you learn these situations, they're very complicated. It's kind of like saying, okay, the big exaggeration, guys, but where should I go to learn about life? Lots of places, right? But the SBDC, I'm going to go to you, Sadie. The SBDC has Sadie.
Well, definitely, folks, I cannot say enough good things about the SBDC because we love Lori. We can all agree upon that. She is amazing, knowledgeable, and what I always love saying is she is a subject matter expert, top of her field. And so we're not saying, Lori is the only amazing one, but I think she is one. But we have many wonderful advisors. So we talked with Lori and she tells about, legal structures, right? IRS. So there are so many other facets about your business. And this is what we love about this small biz talk community. We learn like, oh my God, I had to learn about the permitting process. I had to, get into like the kitchen and, what's the health code requirements. The SBDC can help you with so many facets of your small business. We can always put in a request for Lori, but we might have other questions. And that's where the SBDC pops in. Anything that has to do with your small business. Maybe you're already like thinking, hey, franchising. Like maybe you're already like, you're getting information, but you want to get bigger. We can help you with that. So we're all about from just an idea to making you, well, I don't want to say making you a multimillionaire because now I'm going with that Fendi LLC, Lori. But I'm going to say that, you know what? Why not just grow as far as you want to grow? Do you like that answer, Lori?
There you go.
Let us
I
grow.
love it. Okay, I saw that we got both answers for Anonymous, so I'm going to come back. So the home-based business that is planning to move in a different home soon is moving within the state of California. Okay, so let's go back to the structure we understood. So the home-based business is an LLC. It is legally registered in the state of California. The individual did not move from the state of California, so therefore you do not have to do anything with the legal registration of the LLC. In other words, it can stay legally registered in California. We'll talk about outside of California in a minute, okay? However, there is a rule that within 30 days of any change of the information that would appear on the statement of information, that is the document that you fill out when you open the company and register with the Secretary of State, and you then have it 2 years. Every 2 years on that date, it's due. It says who's the owner, what's the address. So the statement of information for the home-based business, which has that address and has now moved to a new address, needs to be updated at the Secretary of State. So even if it's not due, okay, it could not be due for another year, within 30 days of that move, the statement of information. This brings the LLC state legal filing up to date. Now, if the home is moving to a new jurisdiction, a new city, county, etc., we have to look at the local rules. So say, I'm making it up. So say that they were in Pasadena, they had a Pasadena business license, which is based on that address. Okay, it's based on where the address is legally on the company, which goes into the tax returns. That's the basis of the company on the local level for a business license. you would no longer need that business license. So you would close that account. And wherever you move, if they have a business license requirement, you have to get a business license in that location. That, and of course, if the home-based business has any other permits responsible, those have to be on the local jurisdiction. So whatever the local jurisdiction is. And the only reason is sometimes you'll have a home-based business and some jurisdictions may say, well, if you have more than some parking, you have to get a permit. Sometimes they have weird things like that, even on home-based business. So that's why I say that. So you have to identify what on a local jurisdiction. Now, this company may have other, I'm going to use the word generically, accounts open. Okay. What do I mean? They may have a product or something subject to sales tax. So they may have a seller's permit. That seller's permit has an address. So that address needs to be updated. Okay. So once you look at it, you have to look at the addresses. When you do your federal tax return, you will change the address on the tax return. You do not have to, for your LLC, let the IRS, hey, I changed my address. You don't have to worry about that. The tax return submitted will identify the new address. You will be fine with that. So those are kind of the steps. And what I like to do, guys, and I do this for my company, I do it with my private clients through my company. We make sure we have a nice little, let's call it a cheat sheet, but it's a sheet that says, what is the company? Where is the EIN? What was it formed? What's a statement of information? Little check when it's due. It's like you have, you're when little kids, you're like, this is your name, this is your birth certificate, this is your date, this is it, all the identifying information. That way, if I open another account on the company, I put it in my little, spreadsheet. I've got the website, I've got the account number, I got anything I need to do to update it, and it's right there. And so if I make any changes, I can go back and look at it. Just like if you were to move physically from a house to a house, you'd like go, oh my God, I forgot to change the cable, right? Well, in this case, legally, it can have more connotation than just missing your cable and missing a couple shows, right? So you really can benefit greatly by beginning to organize your information of your company in a one place where you can always look at it. Now, before leaving this, I want to talk about if you were going outside of California. This is a really important aspect. So I want to jump into this because it was something I wanted to talk about. Many people are falling prey to this false belief that they should register their company. Specifically, they talk about it with LLC, so I'm going to use LLC, in a state outside of California to avoid some of the fees that California charges. And also, they say for legal reasons, right? And it's interesting. I can always tell when social media is playing its trumpet, because I start to get tons of calls. And all of a sudden I was like getting all these calls from Wyoming. I'm like, why Wyoming? Well, then I did some check and there was some, social media influencers that were mostly in crypto talking about Wyoming being the place. And of course, then everybody picks it up as the coolest thing since sliced bread and people get the false information. So I'm going to tie it back into if you moved out of California, what choices you would have. But for right now, I want to talk about if you registered outside of California, but you were doing business. This is a legal term, even though it sounds slangish, it's doing business. And doing business could be I'm sitting at my kitchen table selling some bracelets I made on Etsy. Okay, I'm doing business and I'm in California. That's nexus. It's considered the word nexus. I could have storage. I could be a resident. I have a physical presence there, nexus. There's a huge list of all the things that would constitute doing business, even a percentage of revenue. So it's a long list. Don't think it's just the things I'm mentioning. It's a long list. But the way the law works is if you are doing business in California, and sole props are excluded. That's why it's cool to be a sole prop. Okay. So if you're doing business in California and you are registered in a state other than California, you register with the Secretary of State in another state, you have to fill out what is called a foreign entity, meaning outside California, doing business in California. So you would have to register the company in California because it is legally registered in another state. It's registered in California as a foreign entity doing business in California. Now, when you do this, you are subject to the exact same laws, the $800, the statement of information, all the things we're talking about. You're subject to the same laws, the business license, all that. So you did not save on any fees at all. Okay. And legally, you are still subject to California laws. So legally, and I'll explain in a second, how it is different. You didn't avoid anything legally. So people will say, I was like, what is it with Wyoming? What are they trying to say the stick is, as we used to say? And the thing that being told, well, Wyoming does not require the owners of the LLC, the members they're called, to put their names on the documents, and therefore you have more privacy. Your name's not on the document as a owner, or member is the technical word, of an LLC. True in Wyoming. Because you're in California, you've got to register as a foreign entity doing business in California. Your friggin' name's got to be on there. So, hello. It can then, and when what's it say in California? It turns around and it says, oh, they're registered in Wyoming. It's a Wyoming company with a foreign entity doing business in California. Oh, they left off that part. They didn't tell you that on social media. Did they also mention that now you got to pay whatever's in Wyoming and California, and you got to file tax returns in both places? So you just got more admin, more complication, more everything, and you got what out of it? You can brag. I'm registered in Wyoming. Okay. Now, why in the world would somebody want to do that? There's got to be a reason they want to. Let's take Delaware for a second. And this is where I got to talk about hypothetical. And this is one of those where it's just between us guys, okay? This is just between us. Because I just got to explain some things that are more understood to be rather than facts. Okay. You will notice that many of the big corporations, especially on Wall Street, are registered in Delaware. Now, when you are registered in Delaware and you got Nexus in California, everything I said was true. Foreign entity, you still got to be signed up there. You've got to deal with the tax returns. All that's true. But companies may want to do that and incur the extra expense in admin if they feel as though they could be so at risk to, mostly it's usually like class action or big lawsuits, that, and here's the key words, that they want to force the trial to be heard in Delaware. Now, why do I want to force the trial to be heard in Delaware? Delaware has a long history of having what's called precedents. You see in the court cases on TV. Well, there's a precedence of Brown versus the state of whatever in 20, whatever, right? So these precedents are the interpretation of the law. They're the interpretation of the law, right? So when you are wanting to go into court, your lawyer is going to look for a precedence that supports your case. So Delaware has had a long history of big class action lawsuits, nasty lawsuits. And okay, this is where it's between you and I. I'm not saying anything mean, but I don't think I would freak anybody out if I'd say California tends not to be in the corporation's favor. So if I've got an issue that maybe has to do with employees or has to do with customers, I want to hear it maybe in a court that I perceive is a little bit more concerning and kind to the corporations and have precedences where the corporation has been chosen as the winner, if you will. I'll say it that way, right? So do I want that court case tried in California if it's a big employee issue? Probably not. I probably don't, because I'm probably going to lose, right? So I want to make sure I can force the court to be moved, the case to be heard. You've heard this before, the case to be heard, right? Because the rules are that if I am registered in a state, I can request that the case be heard in there. Now, I'm not a lawyer to get in all the details on this. I'm giving you general stuff. There are certain things you can't break a California law without it being still a California law. But you can see why a big company would be like, I don't care if it's twice the amount of legal, or I'm saying twice, it may not be. I don't care if it's all this. I want to make sure that if some court case comes up, I get it heard in Delaware where there's a precedent. Now, this is also a reason that some may choose a corporation structure versus an LLC, because LLCs don't have the precedence. They don't have the same legal advantages, the same structure, the same type of history as a corporation does. So if I've got something like a pharmaceutical or something that I have a concern over, class action lawsuit, I'm going to want to be registered in Delaware, and I'm going to want to be a corporation. And that's why I make these choices. The unnecessary truth is that so many people are listening to this advice that makes sense in a big corporation, but they're being picked up and sold it in their small little business. And I saw a structure the other day from someone that was the wildest ride I ever went on. It was so complicated and confusing, and they could have been a sole prop man, but they got sold into this, and it's costing them all this money to keep it up. So people are getting advice, and it's kind of like saying, okay, I live in an apartment and I just bought $1 million insurance policy, which makes no sense. I don't have $1 million. Or I'm 20 years old. This is a good example, guys. I'm 20 years old and I just bought a $3 million life insurance policy on the grounds that I may have that much money I need to replace and may have kids someday. That's the better way to say it. So people are being sold complexity that they do not need to. Now, if you start operating in California, you got Nexus, and you did not file the foreign entity doing business, and I see this every day, California catches up with you because you're filing a personal tax return there, and it sees the income from a business. It gets you for failure to file, failure to pay if there's payments needed, failure to pay the 800. And I had a slew of people, especially near the end of the year, that started out with a conversation of, well, I never did anything with it. And they literally didn't have revenue. But when you looked at all the fines and the fees and the 800 and the failure to file tax, failure tax return, they were like $3,000 to $5,000 in fees for something they thought was just like a Facebook account that was sitting there vacant. That's why I find social media so disalarming, because people are getting hurt by it. They're getting in trouble for it, right? And that's another point I want to make is in California, if you have no transactions and you have an LLC, you still have to file a zero report. So even if you don't owe money, they can get you in the failure to file. Okay, now I got to go back to anonymous number 2. It's a multi-member LLC. So in that, when you are registering your LLC, the operating agreement does not have percentage of ownerships of the member. Okay. And unlike a corporation where the distribution of the stock, I got 51% stock, you've got 47% stock, whatever, that is going to say 49, sorry. That is going to say how much of a percentage you have of the company, right? So the stock distribution in a corporation is a very clean way to identify ownership. Now, keep in mind, ownership legally may be different than tax basis as well. Okay, so I'm not going to get you confused on that. But just because I say ownership doesn't mean the K1 might be different, because multi-member LLCs and partnerships are taxed on a basis concept. So we're not talking about tax. So what you do is you set up your LLC showing both members on your articles of organization. Your internal, and I say internal meaning it's not uploaded, it's your document, your operating agreement. In there, you put in what is the percentage of ownership. And if it ever changes, you update it. You don't upload these are documents within your file. But if you were to go for some kind of, government document certification loan, you would be showing your operating agreement to show the percentage of ownership. Once again, the tax return could be 50-50 because it's a basis concept, but the operating agreement is the answer to that. Sean has a question about asking whether the SBA has a conference room or meeting space. You might be the SBDC, and I don't know, Sadie, I don't think they have any conference room or meeting space, but I don't believe, SBA, I don't know. I don't see the SBA having any conference room or meeting space. I don't see the SBDC having it either. What I would say is there maybe is a local association like a chamber of commerce, or maybe a facilitator of some kind of business transactions that by default have conference rooms or something that they have available because they're having meetings in anyway. That would be the place to look for a meeting room. Let's see. I have a home-based business registered and not making any progress. Should I close it? I also am semi-retired now, have limited room. Okay, Denise, I bet you, Sadie, what am I going to ask Denise?
My mind is going in many different
And
ways,
what
but you know
legal
what?
structure? Yeah, I want
If
legal
it's
structure. Yeah.
legal
So,
structures, and then I
yeah.
always think about, like, when people are just like they hold on because it's
Oh,
their identity. So I'm
yeah.
very torn on this one. I was like, ooh, but structure, that's the most important one.
First of all, it is because if you have a home-based business and like I talk about a sole prop, and while you're Denise, put that in for me. I need to know what your legal structure is, because I got to talk about closing it. So I'm going to go ahead and answer something, and without telling me what your legal structure is. So I want to talk about the sole prop and the LLC right now and the difference between the two. And this is a beautiful time, and it's going to answer the question because I would assume you're one of the two. And I said, I kind of like sole props because they got great advantages. So there's a couple things I have to talk about in order to explain this. So first of all, a sole prop is not registered with the Secretary of State. Key advantage: no documents you have to fill out, no $800 franchise tax, minimum franchise tax, no statement of information, none of that. It's just like I said, I turn around and I start engaging in business transactions. Poof, I'm magically a sole prop, right? Now, say I had business transactions, it could be just expenses. It doesn't have to be revenue. It's not income, it's, transactions. And I have them during the year, January, December. I file my tax return, which is a Schedule C, same as an LLC. Say the next year I run off on vacation somewhere and I don't do anything throughout that whole year. I don't do a Schedule C. I have nothing to report, not income, transactions. I could have expenses, which would lower my overall tax, right? No, I have nothing to report. So I don't have any transactions. I don't fill out any tax return. I didn't incur any fee. I don't have to close it. I didn't open it. If I got an EIN, I don't have to do anything with that either. So the sole prop is so fluid. It allows you to keep it open, if you will, because there's nothing to open and nothing to close. So it's a beautiful, beautiful structure. Here's the downfall. Does the government get any money off of you other than taxes? No, you don't have, you still have business license, right? Don't get that mixed up. You still have business license, but do you get the 800? Do they get the $25? Do they get it? No. And then people go, I don't want my name anywhere. So I'm going to get a different address and put it on my LLC, which creates all kinds of problems. I'm like, you don't want your name anywhere? Be a sole prop. You're not registered anywhere. So say I decide I'd be a sole prop. I am a sole prop and I want to use a name other than my surname, Lori Williams, right? I want to use a name other than my surname. So I want to be Best Doggy Sweaters, right? Best Doggy Sweaters. So when I go to the farmer's market, if I have a little marketing sign saying Best Doggy Sweaters, that's fine. I could do that. I could have a website, Doggy Sweaters. I could have an old-fashioned business card, Best Doggy Sweaters, right? It's only when somebody goes to write a check out to me, if I just use any payment, but let's say check, credit card, and it is written or the name Best Doggy Sweaters comes up, and the bank goes, wait a minute, we don't have the name Best Doggy Sweaters on the bank account. We only have Lori Williams. This won't go into my bank account. Just like Sadie can't write a check into Sadie's name and put it in my bank account. You can't. The name has to be on the bank account, right? This is where a doing business as comes in, or it's also called a fictitious business name. People say I'm operating as a DBA. That's not even, I hear it all the time. That is not even a true statement. That is not a true statement at all. Nobody operates as a DBA. So that's like say that, okay, my name's Lori. Let's make it up. Let's say people call me a nickname Lore. I go, I'm operating as a Lore. Well, no, that's a nickname. No, that doesn't even make sense. So what happens is the DBA, and I'm going to give you a legal term, a DBA allows you to do financial transactions in a name other than your surname, if you're a sole prop, because it's under your name, it's you, or the name you registered your company. Like you might I have a DBA. I have Business Simply Put is the LLC is the registration of my company. I also have a DBA, Tax Simply Put. Okay. So I have DBAs, right? You can have different DBAs. You don't want to get crazy with them because otherwise you're constantly spending money on marketing and everything. So there's some things into it. But yeah, there's no reason that you can't have several DBAs, right? So in that, if I want to be a sole prop, I can get a DBA that allows me to have a company name, I can get an EIN that allows me to not use my social security number. I didn't incur any fees with the government. My name's not registered anywhere in the system. I don't have to worry about that if I choose to worry about it. I'm not saying you need to, but if you choose to, I don't have to open it and I don't have to close it, right? And so in that, though, people will say, well, legally, you're not protected. And this is a way more conversation than I have time allotted here, but I'm going to just give you a quick rundown. So please note that this is incomplete. Let's walk through legally what it means. So it means that someone cannot sue a LLC more than what its assets or its worth. So say I've got an LLC, I've got this much in the bank, I got this computer, maybe it adds up to 100,000. 50,000, whatever. Somebody can't sue me beyond 50,000, right? Now, if I'm a sole prop, I might have a house worth $1 million. So somebody can sue me to $1 million. So people say you need to be an LLC to protect your assets so somebody doesn't take away your house. Kind of like the Wyoming thing. There's a little truth in everything. I always say every single thing has a little truth and some lie, or a lot of lie. Doesn't matter. There's a little truth in everything. So let's walk through reality. I'm going to be somebody that is just doing website design because everybody can relate to what I'm saying. So I am selling my websites for 5,000. I'm just making this up. And Sadie got a website from me, and Sadie told me it was the pits. And she started screaming. I go, Sadie doesn't do it, but Sadie, I get to pick on you on that.
I love it. Sadie said, "This is the pits."
This is the pits, and I hate you, and I'm gonna sue you, and I'm like that. And I called her a name, and I said, oh my God, just give her the damn money back. She's giving me a headache. So I give her 5,000 back and say, take the damn thing. I don't even want to know you. Don't ever come to my face again. That's typically what happens, guys, because if Sadie wanted to sue me, in most jurisdictions, it's got to be at least 10,000. So Sadie's got to take a day off of work, go down to the courts, file some documents, take me to small claims court, have another day. We go in front of the judge. And usually what's going to happen is the judge is going to say, well, did Lori do any work on it? Well, Lori did some work. Sadie, you didn't like it. Maybe you're going to pay half of it, right? But we all wasted that much time. So I'm going to be like, I ain't going to small claims court, but I'll just give her the money back so she shuts up. And chances are, even if I didn't, Sadie's going to be like, I'm not even going to go to small claims court. I just had a situation. I'm sure I would have won, hands down, but I didn't want to bother with small claims court, right? Now, that the website I did was many websites and it was 11,000. Okay, now I'm outside small claims court. I got to hire Sadie. That's right, she's mad. Sadie has to hire a lawyer, and she has to do a discovery phase where the lawyer sends me a letter that I got to produce information to support what the claim is. And her lawyer has to confirm that there's a big enough claim to go to court. If there is, we got to go to court. And we go to court. Now, how many people do you know have a website design that are going to court? It's just not happening. Or many of your small businesses, they're not going to court over these things. And even if they did, okay, so we're into the jury, right? We're in the jury. The bill's 10,000, 11,000, right? And they find that I didn't follow through. I didn't do anything. So Sadie wins, and I have to give her 10,000 back. How in the world is the court going to come after my house? See, this is the part they're missing. The court has to justify, so there has to be malfeasance. There has to be a civil liability. Oh, by the way, you didn't do her website and you punched her in the face and she got a broken nose, okay? How are they going to get to any number over the 10,000? I would have to have something I did that caused harm. For the most part, if there's something I did that caused harm, that's going to allow me in my small business to get to that amount, it's going to be outside my LLC because it's going to come under civil liability. So the LLC is not protecting me from civil liability. So the truth of the matter is, you can't really get sued beyond what the actual owing is unless you show harm. If you have negligence, the LLC doesn't protect you. And at the end of the day, what you really, really want is errors and omission that I can say, well, let me go back. I did a good job. Sadie doesn't think it. She says that it was not representative. There was some kind of neglect. And I'm going to use an errors and omissions insurance to cover me, not the LLC. So I know I went through that fast, but I'm hoping that, and you guys can tell me, did anybody get a little light bulb? Like, wow, okay, I get this. Oh, it's not the LLC that's protecting me. Now, I had a client that was an herbalist that would just suggest herbs, operated sole prop. Then she created what I called ingestibles, teas, tinctures, they would call it. And she started selling in major distribution stores. I want to be an LLC at that point. That's got too much exposure, right? And this is the other thing. People start out, it's be like, okay, I'm graduating from high school. I'm going to have 3 kids someday, so I'm going to buy a 3-bedroom house. No, you get an apartment and you get the 3-bedroom house when it's appropriate. You can change legal structures throughout. You can't become something. People say, can I become something? No, you are a sole prop. You're unregistered. You file documents. You become an LLC. You choose not to be an LLC. You dissolve the LLC and maybe file documents to be an S Corp, right? But you can just be the right thing at the time. And what breaks my heart, and I literally mean it, is that I see these people that can't afford any money for marketing, can't even afford to pay their bills. They're paying the $800. They paid LegalZoom to have the company set up. They never friggin' needed any of this. And they could have just started that afternoon and put all that money into marketing, and they're getting so caught up. Everybody is like, got this in reverse. I first sit there and get my legal structure all set up. I do all this, and then I come up with an idea, and then I make a doggy sweater. So at the end of the day, any question, the wise answer usually is, it depends. If you think about any question that you can ask in your life, it depends. Even some of the hardest questions. Some of the hardest questions in life, a appropriate next answer is, it depends. And if the hardest questions in life have the next wisdom answer, it depends, and you look at the situation and advise accordingly, how is it that everybody should be an LLC? How is it that everybody should be registered out of the state of California? How is it that everybody should be taxed as an S Corp? How is it that everybody should even be in business? So I end Lori's talk today with, it depends. It depends. And things have many more layers of complexity and understanding and wisdom, which, like I say, I value intelligence, but I really value wisdom because I can go to a lot of sources, even AI now, and I can pull up facts. I can pull up knowledge. I can pull up a lot, but it's the human wisdom that I think counts more than ever. Okay, I'm out of time, Sadie. I hope you guys like to ask Lori. I always think I'm rambling on to no use and I'm boring you, but people always seem to love it. So I will continue to throw an Ask Lori in. If I didn't see your question, if it was in chat, Sadie will give you a way to get in touch with me and you can make a one-on-one. Sadie, any last thoughts for this Ask Lori?
Well, you know what, Lori? I'm going to share something with you because I love you so much, and I'm going to be vulnerable right now. I'm going to be
Okay.
vulnerable right now. But so I'm flashing back to 20 something year old me, whatever age. I'm living in New York. I'm living that life. I'm, independent, small, small prop, right? And what do? I set up an LLC because I'm afraid of getting sued. And then when I do my taxes, I'm thinking I'm going to get all these write-offs, all these things, and I'm like, and ask my tax person, and I'm like, I'll say, WTF, WTF, and they're like, yeah, no, like having an LLC, and so now listening to you, I was like, yes, it's the E and O. That's all you really need, and guess how I filed for my LLC paperwork?
Mm.
LegalZoom.
Yeah. No, it's true. So many fall for it. And then they say to me, well, I got it because I wanted the tax breaks of an LLC. I'm like, there is none. And I've had
Mhm.
people so convinced on social media, and I go, oh, yeah, okay, you're right. Let me pull up the form for a sole prop and show it to you, Schedule C. Okay, now let me grab the LLC and show it to you, Schedule C. They go, oh, no, your screen's not sharing. You're seeing the same form. Like I said, there is no difference.
Yeah, I learned
Yeah.
that the hard way, Lori. So 100%. It's like we've been sold this idea that we need an LLC. No, no, we don't.
You know what? You're not being ridiculous or vulnerable. Back in my, okay, I'm going to end this with you guys. Ready? You ready for this? You
Yeah.
ready, Sadie?
Yeah.
in my probably early 30s, I got talked into filing a corporation in Delaware.
Love it.
It wasn't till another CPA said, why are you spending all this money? You're having to file this. The other CPAs were gladly charging me all the extra money for the double filing. And then, of course, years later, as I understood this, I was like, what the hell was I doing? But I was told, oh, we need to file in Delaware. So, yeah, no, Sadie, I speak from my own biography on pretty much everything I talk about. Those that know me well know it's true. I don't sit in a superior position looking down on people. I'm literally always speaking to little Lori when I talk with everybody. And if you ever took my financial series, I talk about that a lot. I'm teaching what little Lori was trying to figure out at 25 and was so scared. So good share, Sadie, and I'm right with you. Okay, Sadie's going to stay after. She's going to make sure you guys that want to have my contact information and check out to the SBDC and all the wonderful advisors we have. And next week, we're going to have a great conversation with a guest. And remind me if I hadn't had an Ask Lori in a while and you want one. I hope you guys learned, got entertained, and have a better understanding. And at the end of the day, know how really complicated this stuff is. It really is. Okay. Till next week, I'm Lori Williams. I am your host of Small Biz Talk. I'll see everybody next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, Lori. All righty, guys. So we know the drill. We're gonna hang out, gonna leave this chat open because I know we were all listening to Lori getting the information. I'm putting away information in here, like I put the URLs for Lori's upcoming webinars. If you want to reach out to Lori, drop her an email. I put in the email address for her. Just be sure to put attention Lori Williams in the subject line so we can make sure we get that email to her. I'm so glad that you love this, Mary. I know, right? It's just one of those things where it's like, it's so good, not so good. I would say we love having subject matter experts as highly qualified as Lori, as one of our advisors over at the LASBDC, because, like I said, I did my own personal share. I formed my own LLC in New York, did legal Zoom, and for absolutely for nothing. So, yes, we always have lots of information about because where they say you don't know what you don't know, so keep coming back. You never know like what random tidbit, what this what's going to come out of just sharing information, because as small business owners we all have little different experiences, little pieces of the puzzle, but it's all about helping one another. We love our community, we want to make sure our community thrives, so please become a client of the SBDC. Come every single Wednesday, reach out, participate. As you can tell, I'm too much of a cheerleader. I've had lots of coffee, folks. So I'm going to put myself on mute. I got the poll going. I'm going to see if you have any additional needs in the webinar chat here. But I said click away because once I close this Zoom session down, the URLs will be taken down. So don't worry, I'm going to hang out, maybe sip a little bit more of this coffee or maybe some water so I bring it down a couple of notches. But please let me know if you need anything. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Alrighty, bye.